There is little question that the former police officer David Carrick will be jailed for life with a catalogue of violent and brutal attacks.
These are the necessities that I've just explained to you.
No necessities, okay.
All the victims were aware of your occupation and affected by it.
I've been a police officer for 20 years.
Right, David.
Do you want me to come naked like this?
Born in January 1975, David Carrick joined the Met in 2001 after quitting his career as a soldier, pledging that, quote, "I will, to the best of my power, cause the peace to be kept and preserved and prevent all offences against the persons and properties of Her Majesty's subjects," unquote. Around a year later, while he was working in the London Borough of Merton, he met a 20-year-old, who we'll call T, in a bar. He invited her to a housewarming party, which he said would be taking place at his flat nearby. He told her he was the safest person that she could be with because he was a police officer. Reassured by those words, she went with him. Once they got to Carrick's, Carrick graped her in all three ways. In all her three holes, to be exact, using violence to restrain her. When she struggled, Carrick put a handgun to her head. When he graped her orally, he forced his cock inside her mouth with such force that she thought she was going to gag. During the ordeal, he also bit and bruised her, keeping her in his flat for the hours that he spent committing all his violent acts against her. As you've probably gathered, there was no party. Now viewer, if I've got you hooked on the story so far, do subscribe, give the video a like, drop a comment when you're ready and donate. Hit the thanks button below, I'll appreciate you. Now, if you're thinking that Carrick was confident that his victims wouldn't report him due to the likelihood that nobody would take their word against that of a serving police officer, you are 100% right. When T left his flat, she went to A&E, where she was found to be bleeding from her vagina and to have both external and internal injuries, including bite marks, bruising and patches of missing hair where Carrick had dragged her around. She had a conversation with the A&E nurse and told her that she had been raped by a police officer. The nurse's response illustrates the breadth of barriers to bringing offenders like Carrick to justice. She told the young woman that if she reported the perpetrator, a charge might not even be brought, that the police would protect him, and that it might be better for her to just move on with her life. And that is exactly what T tried to do. And as a matter of fact, despite being the first of Carrick's 12 victims, T was the last to come forward. The perpetrator was indeed so confident both in the protection that his status within the police force afforded him and in the difficulty faced by those who speak out about sexual abuse that he offended against all sorts of women, including two fellow police officers. The first, who we'll call M, was working in the same team as Carrick in the spring of 2004. The two flirted. M went back to Carrick's flat, anticipating that the two would have vaginal sex, only to find Carrick graping her heinily and ignoring her objections, telling her that that was, quote, "what you did," unquote. Very disturbingly, while this police officer had herself been trained to deal sensitively with grape complaints, she didn't report Carrick until 17 years later in 2021. The reason for this mammoth delay was shame. She didn't feel brave enough to report a anal grape. And in case you're wondering, I'm disguising certain words because YouTube demonetizes content and sometimes doesn't even allow it to be published in the first place, depending on the content, including vocabulary. The second police officer, who we'll call F, was working as a barmaid in 2008 when she met Carrick, by which time the man was stationed in Barnet. She was 21, while Carrick was 33. F subsequently became a police officer, she and her partner, that's Carrick, buying a house together at some point. Carrick was in fact F's first sexual partner, and he systematically raped her both vaginally and anally. Unsurprisingly, F didn't think that she would be believed if she told anyone, including her police colleagues. Thankfully, however, she eventually mustered the courage to at least leave Carrick. When she notified Carrick of her decision to move out, the man responded by brandishing a knife at her and gratuitously slashing her work shirt, hoping no doubt to cause her trouble at work. And remember, both Carrick and F were police officers. In 2009, Carrick moved from being a borough officer to holding a post in the Diplomatic Protection Group, DPG, this being the same branch of the Met where Wayne Couzens was stationed when he did what he did to Sarah Everard, curiously enough. Around this time, Carrick belonged to a martial arts club where he met two further victims who we'll call D and S. As regards D, Carrick took her away on one occasion from a social event where she'd become upset. Instead of taking her home, however, he took her to his flat where he stripped himself naked and forcibly put his fingers inside her vagina. Like all the other victims that we have so far met, Dee didn't report Carrick because she didn't think anyone would believe her word against that of a police officer. As regards S from the martial arts club, after a social evening where both she and Carrick had been drinking, Carrick charmed her into returning to his home to spend the night with him. Once they went upstairs and got naked, however, Carrick of course became aggressive, using force to pin the woman down on the bed, scaring her and challenging her to overcome him. He then turned her around and tried to grape her, but soon found that, much to his shock and disgust, he couldn't keep himself hard. After that incident, whenever Carrick came across S in public, he cussed her down in front of everyone present. The man had no fear of reprisals, as we have seen, and no remorse, as we have also seen. Now, between D and S, Carrick attacked a woman that he had actually been to school with. We'll call the woman N. Having reconnected at a school reunion in 2003, N and Carrick both attended another reunion over the August bank holiday in 2009. N ended up sharing a room with another woman and also with Carrick, so there were three in a room. She and Carrick were in the same bed, and despite her remonstrations, Carrick kept touching her intimately. She left the bed and got in with her friend, but Carrick dragged her back, held her arms behind her back, and told her it would be his, quote, little secret, unquote. N was married, however, she didn't want anything to do with Carrick. She fought against him as best she could, but Carrick no less managed to penetrate her vagina and her anus with his fingers before trying to grape her. I've got no idea what the other woman in the room did when the said horrific acts were taking place. I don't know if she was awake or if she was asleep or anything. Likewise, I can only assume that Carrick's attempt to grape N with his cock was unsuccessful. In 2015, Carrick anally graped another old school friend who we'll call O. He told O that he was now a Met police officer, and O was in fact attracted to him. However, after Carrick began to have anal sex with her, she told him to stop because it hurt. True to his fucked up form, Carrick ignored her, leaving the woman in pain for days and days afterwards. Once again, the victim didn't feel that she could report Carrick because Carrick was the police. In 2016, Carrick had a 6-month relationship with a woman, we'll call her B, which he eventually admitted was coercive and controlling. He in fact pled guilty at the last minute to all the offences against him, or to most of them. He met B through a dating app when she was in a vulnerable position in an unhappy marriage. Carrick was intensely charming and B quickly agreed to move in with him. She knew that Carrick was a police officer and again she felt reassured by that. She probably felt substantially less so, however, when Carrick offered her £1,000 a month to be his, quote, slut, unquote. Even though Carrick didn't want B to bring her daughter with her when she moved in with him, for reasons that I can only guess at, that is what B did. Devastatingly, the girl, who was about 10 years of age, witnessed some of Carrick's subsequent abuse of her mother. Over the 6-month duration of Carrick's relationship with B, Carrick cut B off from most of her friends and family. He watched her while he was at work using a camera that he had installed in his home. As a result of the weight restrictions that Carrick imposed on B, along with his supervision of what B could and couldn't eat, B dropped in the space of 2 months from a size 14 to a size 6. In a singular act of cruelty, Carrick forced B to have anal sex with him shortly after she had undergone an operation to remove hemorrhoids. Carrick did so with violence and anger. Already in intense pain, B tried to fight him off, but he still managed to tear her anus. One night, she didn't want to have oral sex with Carrick because her daughter's school friends were staying over and she was worried that they might hear the act. Carrick forced her to perform the act regardless, all the while humiliating her and gagging her so that she struggled to breathe. Her daughter heard her mother being raped on that occasion and on others. By the time B escaped from Carrick, she was suicidal. Carrick's next controlling and coercive relationship lasted from March 2017 to January 2019, and for me personally, this was where the man enacted his most heinous acts of violence and savagery. The man was a total fucking animal, come on. Carrick met Jay, that's what we're calling the woman, in a bar in Ely when he was socialising with other police officers. Again, the relationship developed quickly. Carrick ruined the woman with his usual charm. Like her predecessors, Jay was reassured by Carrick's being a police officer. Carrick controlled who Jay saw, what she did, what she ate, what she wore, and even, listen to this, which side of the fucking pavement she was allowed to walk on. He told her she belonged to him and must obey him. He humiliated her, calling her names such as whore and prostitute. He threatened her with a police baton and sent her a photograph from work of his firearm with the message, quote, "Remember, I am the boss," unquote. Jay worked as a mental health nurse, but Carrick belittled her job and derided people with mental health problems. Now, this included Jay's very son, who he stopped her from seeing for a whole year. Carrick tracked Jay using the said camera in his house, even speaking to her through it from work and accusing her of being lazy. Sexually, he was aggressive with her, raping her anally and orally to ejaculation on numerous occasions. Jay would sustain bleeding from her anus because of the anal grapes. Carrick sometimes used police-issue handcuffs to restrain her while raping her. The perpetrator would whip her, leaving welts on her bottom, either as part of sex or as a punishment. Showing utter contempt for her as a human being, Carrick would shut her naked into a small cupboard under the stairs as punishment, even while she had a panic attack. While keeping her prisoner under the stairs, Carrick would stand outside and whistle. His degradation of Jay extended to trying to fist her and making her lick his anus. He drilled into her that he was the law itself and that he owned her. He was often heavily drunk when he abused Jay. As we have since come to expect, Jay didn't report Carrick to the police because Carrick was the police himself. During Carrick's relationship with Jay, Carrick continued connecting with women on a dating site, which led him to meet W in July 2018. W was a cleaner, and Carrick told her that he wanted her to clean for him, as well as the fact that he was a police officer and that he had carried out a police check on her. W trusted Carrick because of his job. Carrick let her see text messages to Jay which were so inappropriate and abusive that they made W feel sorry for Jay. And I'll just say as a side note, then why the fuck did W carry on with Carrick? She should have run for the hills the second she saw those messages. Anyway, sorry, I still see her as a victim though. One day, Carrick attacked W while she was in the nude and in the middle of cleaning his shower. What he actually did was to put his cock into her mouth, causing her to gag and be unable to breathe. When he ejaculated into her mouth, she was sick. Also overlapping with Jay was P, who Carrick also met on a dating site. P is a vulnerable woman about the same age as Carrick. She has a mild learning disability and experiences anxiety. She's not able to speak up for herself confidently, and this would have been apparent to Carrick. Carrick told her he worked as an armed police officer and promptly engaged in a highly abusive relationship with her, as fucking usual. P wanted Carrick to like her, but he treated her like a slave and called her one. Carrick orally raped her on at least 3 occasions, putting his cock so far down her throat that she gagged, couldn't breathe and vomited. This excited Carrick. On occasions when she performed oral sex on Carrick, he urinated in her mouth and onto her body. He forced a dildo into her anus until she was screaming and also tried to force his fist into her. When she screamed, he shoved her into the shower and urinated over her, causing her to vomit. In February 2020, Carrick met another woman who, like a previous of his victims we'll call F, through a dating site, and she moved in with Carrick in March that year and left again in July that year. F believed that Carrick was trustworthy, Because he's a police officer, was a police officer. Carrick quickly gained control over F's behaviour and time. She was afraid of Carrick both because of his aggression and because he threatened to report her to immigration authorities. The first time he raped her anally, she cried from the pain and her anus bled. He told her that she was making a fuss. On each occasion she told him she didn't want to do it. Carrick, as usual, disregarded her clear objections and subdued her. As in the case of Carrick's other victims, Carrick abused and degraded F by forcing his cock into her mouth and by pissing on her, including pissing over her face. In February 2023, after pleading guilty at the last minute to a number of the charges against him, his guilty plea sparing the need for a trial, serial rapist and violent savage David Carrick got 30 years.
These are the necessities that I've just explained to you.
No necessities, what I keep going.
Well, that's one of three, one of four. So, okay. Well, I'll allow you to get some close
What is it you're searching for?
articles relating to the offences
in St Albans.
in 2020. This is the allegation that's been made to us. Okay, sir.
There's no necessity.
Yes, there is.
So I've been a police officer for 20 years.
Right, David.
Do you want me to come naked like this?
No, just understand you're under arrest.
I know
Okay.
I'm under
just
arrest.
explain to us what do you need.
But hold it like this. Don't worry
Right.
about it.
Can one of my colleagues go and get you stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you wanna? Yeah.
Which one's yours?
The back one.
Okay.
Are you in the address on your own?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Where are your keys? Then we'll bring those at least.
If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.